Pretty crazy story. How did the Amorite Giants make way for the lion-like men of Moab? So Genesis 11, Terah has taken his family from Ur of the Chaldeans to the land of Canaan. His family is Abram, his wife Sarai, and grandson Lot. It's established that Lot is single at this point, super key detail. Now they touch down, Terah dies, time goes by, and Abram and Lot have to split the land. Lot finds himself in Sodom. Sodom's already an established paganistic area. We know what happens with Sodom and Gomorrah. This is where he meets his wife, and this is why the bloodline thing is so crucial. Now, Abram is camped out at the Oaks of Mamre. Mamre is an Amorite. Amos 2:9, we know that Amorites are giants. Coincidentally, Mamre has two brothers, Eshel and Ur. Eshel, coincidentally, the valley of Eshel is where the spies found those giant grapes in Numbers, in the report of the spies. Now, Genesis 14, the battle of 4 versus 5 king takes place, which is a wild giant story that we can get into much later. But during that, Lot is kidnapped. Somebody breaks out, runs and tells Abram, hey, I know where they're holding your nephew. So Abram and his Amorite allies go kick some butt and get Lot back, which is wild. Abram shows up with 3 giants. They get Lot, bring him back. Lot goes back to Sodom. Much later, Sodom goes, judgment falls upon Sodom. 2 angels come down, and then there's I think a reference to like really animalistic sexuality. It's really crazy, not going to get into, but judgment comes upon them. Lot's wife turns and looks, and that's when she becomes a pillar of salt because she came from Sodom. That's that bloodline. Now, Lot and his 2 daughters, they go and hang out in a cave. His daughters freak out. They don't know how they're going to be able to reproduce, so they come up with a really crazy, nasty ancestral plan and had relations with him. I believe their bloodlines were already tainted, and then therefore, through atavism, that ancestral relation was enough to spur the benign genes, and thus caused the animal reaction in their genes, basically. Because again, when you look at how they were acting to the angels in Sodom, that wasn't like human behavior. So who knows? They could have been experimenting with genes at that point. And then again, that stressor of incest is what kicked it off. And then that's why we have references to the lion-like men of Moab multiple times in the Bible. So basically, Amorite giants are what helped kick off, if you will, bringing Lot back, kicked off the lion-like men of Moab. 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.